No one's going to probably watch us anyway, but then you guys are so big now that don't have that option. If you have a pleb on like myself, there's still going to be people that are interested in what you have to say, Peter, because you are the everyman, man. That's what you represent. I love it.
Man, listen. Vortex. Oh, man.
It's been a minute, Peter.
That's my first thing.
I'm so glad.
Welcome back. It's been a minute.
I'm so proud of you guys. I'm just so happy to be back on here. I'm so happy to see you in real life, Peter. It's been great. I've just been following your story, man, and the Craig Wright crap, and then just your success as well. And it's just, man, where you guys are now.
Dude, you're my guy, right? Listen, you were one of the first people I had on the podcast a long time ago, back in 2018.
Yep.
Did we do it in person?
No, it was not in person. It was over Skype.
It was over.
Yeah.
But we've hung out in Vegas.
Oh, of course. Bunch of times. Unconfiscatable.
Yeah.
Tone Vase' conference. Shout out to Tone Vase.
Shout out to Tone Vase.
Unconfiscatable conference. Unconfiscatable.com.
we had breakfast.
Yep.
I was hungover that day.
Little bit. I couldn't tell, Peter.
I fucking missed you, man.
Dude, every time I watch your guys' show, it's like watching your family, almost like your Bitcoin family, your extended Bitcoin family. And you guys just keep putting on great shows. I was just telling Max, like it's like pretty much you've kept the signal after all this time, and you can't say that about every podcast.
The signal, but I'm an idiot.
The signal is that you are an idiot. No,
yeah, that is
it. The signal is that you're just constantly trying to learn in public, and that's not something that everybody's humble enough to do. So
yeah, but we now have our boy Danny here on the road, part of the show.
Danny's helping us out.
Anyone listening, by the way, we're in beautiful Las Vegas. We in a very nice hotel, and we're in the garden. So if there's a plane going over, or it gets a bit rustly,
if there's wind, if there's the sun shining all over the place.
Yeah, and if anyone is watching and they're like, "Oh, the light's not good," well, we're dealing with clouds.
Yeah, sorry to Ben, the editor.
Yeah, sorry, Ben. Man, I've missed you. How you been? It's been 6 years since we recorded. I can't remember where I last saw you. Was it pre-COVID? Pre-COVID. So it's been years since I've seen you. You kind of disappeared for a while. I didn't know if we're ever going to see you again.
I kind of stopped talking about Bitcoin publicly.
Yeah.
I was just telling Danny that pretty much like I've kind of said everything I wanted to say for the most part at that time, back in 2019, 2020. And but now I've got a few more things to say. It's a very interesting time in Bitcoin right now.
You came around in Bitcoin pretty early, right?
Yeah, actually, World Crypto Network and stuff, we started recording, Tone Vase, Mad Bitcoins, and myself back 2013, 14. But I got into Bitcoin actually around 2012.
Yeah.
Which I think at the same time Tone Vase got in because of the Cyprus, the whole Cyprus incident of them taking their money from the banks. So yeah, about 2012, holidays, fall 2012, I think is when I got in.
Well, I think there's this like 7-year itch in Bitcoin where if you do like 7-8 years, you start to feel a bit kind of like you need a break.
You really do. After 2 cycles,
yeah.
That's what I think. After 2 cycles, everybody should probably take a year off.
All right, Danny, we're going to take a year off from the show.
After it's been 2 cycles.
This has been my third. Well, kind of my fourth, actually.
Well, 2017 is when you got it.
Well, so 2013 was the first time, but I didn't look at Bitcoin. I just bought it for Silk Road. Didn't play with it.
For your mother.
Didn't study economics. Yeah. I didn't care. Did 2017. That's my first one, where I went from broke to rich to broke in the space of a year. Had a brilliant year. Launched a podcast. 2021 was the first bull market where I kind of knew what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And now I'm in the third one, and I feel pretty calm about it all in terms of I know
calm and confident.
Well, just know the goal at the game to me is stack sats and not fuck around with shit coins and just build. And so I'm happy with that.
See, that's also how I try to find my signal too, is like the people that stay with Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin is so complex and crazy that you could spend your lifetime in Bitcoin improving it without having to go to anything else. And you've seen some of the greats that were interested in Bitcoin early on stray from that kind of stuff, like Andreas. I don't want to drop too many names, right? Like Andreas released Mastering Ethereum right after Mastering Bitcoin. I mean, I'm sure he was interested in the technology, but at the end of the day, you didn't need to do that. If you really knew the end game, if you really knew Bitcoin and knew the end game, you would know that you have to stay and improve Bitcoin because this is our only shot. I wonder with Andreas whether he felt like he needed to do the book to understand Ethereum. It was purely entertainment in my opinion. Like I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but for me it was purely to increase his own following. Because I'm sure he was interested in. Of course, he's a technologist, right? But that kind of stuff. When people go into altcoins and they leave Bitcoin, especially if actually a technologist, you only really leave Bitcoin for fame or money. I mean, that's kind of the only reason that you leave it.
I do miss Andreas a lot. I miss him as a friend, having someone to talk to. He was very good to me in the early days.
Yeah,
Gave me
I
his
had
time.
lunch with him a couple times, you know? I mean,
And good guy.
of course.
Gave me some good advice at times where I was struggling with Bitcoin or struggling with, the podcast and the feedback. He was very good. I know he feels personally burned by what happened, but
So does Roger.
yeah, but in different ways. I think Andres is still out there doing his thing. Shout out to his Patreon. Go check it out. You can still engage with him. He still does great Bitcoin content. I don't think he'll ever be back publicly, and that's cool. But I miss him. I still send people to his old videos. I still think he nailed them. What should we do when a plane comes?
I think just keep going.
We keep going.
Just keep going.
Did you see we made a show on a plane?
I didn't see that one.
Yeah, Jeff
On a
Booth.
plane.
We were in Africa. We had Jeff Booth and Alex Gladstein, and we were flying from Malawi to Kenya.
From Malawi to Kenya.
And we're like, fuck it, let's just get the cameras out. Let's get some mics out. And we made a show on a plane.
Wow. That's awesome, man.
But yeah, look, Roger's slightly different. I think Roger feels burned in a different way because he still thinks he's right.
Mhm.
I still think right now there's legs in having the discussion.
Yep.
And
You
I still
have to
think
always remember
yeah.
what happened.
but it comes out. I still think it comes out. You were wrong. But I understand his argument more now than I understood in 2017.
Interesting.
Because in 2017 I was green. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, yeah, bigger blocks, yeah, it's good for business. Oh yeah, smaller blocks, it's good for decentralization. Oh, we'll see what happens. And I still understand. I mean, I firmly understand the need for a scarcity with the block space. We've got to pay the miners. But I've had to come to terms with the idea that if you don't control a UTXO, it's going to be hard to be self-sovereign. I know there's some ideas, but and that's, I think, what Roger wanted. I don't think it was $5.
And this is just
Bitcoin.
comes from, a fundamental misunderstanding, right, of what Bitcoin was. And that's why we can't put all of our eggs in one basket like Andreas or like Michael Saylor, right? Because they're going to be wrong one day.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I hope that they're wrong one day about something. So far, Saylor just keeps freaking killing it. But one day, I'm sure he'll be wrong. And, Andreas was wrong and other people will be wrong. And so that's why it's really, really important to make sure that you listen to a variety of people, a variety of different things. We cannot, as a Bitcoin community, put all of our eggs in one basket. Like when people were out there with the recent conference just chanting Sailor, like that scared me a little bit.
That's risky.
Because that reminds me of the days of Roger when we freaking straight up called this guy Bitcoin Jesus. Like this is what we were calling him, is Bitcoin Jesus. And so then the media started calling him Bitcoin Jesus. And so then, how can you say no to Bitcoin Jesus, right? So that is some of the risks that we have there. But I don't fear it long term too greatly. But there's definitely something there where I have to keep my eye on. You got to keep your eye on.
He's just released a book.
Yep. I haven't seen that actually.
Yeah, what was it called?
What's it called?
Hijacking Bitcoin.
Oh, Roger's book. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh God. Yes. Roger's book. Dude, it's so crazy because, I've had so many personal conversations with Roger back in the day, DM conversations. I'm trying to explain this to him. And I know I'm just a .NET web development pleb. Like I'm not a protocol developer straight up, but I listen to these people who are protocol developers. And again, my signal is Bitcoin, right? That's the signal. And so everybody who's actually staying in Bitcoin and working on Bitcoin is telling me these things. And when I look at the logic, I'm like, look, Roger, this is the way we're going to have to scale for now. We cannot do larger blocks. That will prevent everybody from freaking being able to actually run a full node at some point. And so, that kind of stuff. But I do actually even want to get into a little bit of the history of the block size wars because people don't even remember it now.
Well, we should. And I'm
just a little bit even.
We should get into it. And I'm going to do a setup for that. But one thing I will say is I'm intrigued to read the book. Part of me is like, just ignore it. But part of me is like, no, let's hear it. And
what you'll see is just a fundamental misunderstanding. I mean,
that's and I think it will be wrapped in some conspiracy.
Of course. Remember the small block conspiracies and stuff. I
know.
What Roger calls a small block conspiracies, the rest of us call the market. But
yeah,
that's fine.
I would interview him again, and I know it'd trigger people and piss people off. But
I wouldn't even blame you for it because, like at the end of the day, Roger is a human being. He was big part of this Bitcoin community, and I do believe in letting everybody kind of air their piece and say what they want to say. But unfortunately, Roger's kind of said everything he wanted to say. It's just now in book form.
Yeah. Well, listen, so the framing, let me frame this for you. So as I said, in 2017, I was green and I came into these block size wars and I was like, I was making a podcast and I was interviewing big blockers and small blockers. I was like, oh, well, it's like we're either going to get these big blocks or we're not. We're going to fall. Yeah, whatever. I mean, I'll go with the flow. I mean, I fell on the small block side mainly because I went with what Jameson Lopp and Adam Back were saying. I was like, oh, okay, I think I trust you more. But I didn't realize what was at stake at the time. I didn't realize how severe it was because I just didn't. I hadn't worked in Bitcoin. I hadn't had the context. I didn't understand how much it meant to people. It was actually Eric Lombroso who once sat me down and explained to me what was going on.
Oh, man, shout out to Eric real quick.
Yeah.
That dude helped me explain a lot of things to me. He helped me a lot during the Blocksize.
Fucking great guy. So now having done 7, 8 years, now I get it. If the Blocksize wars were now, I'd be right in the mix defending what I think Bitcoin is. And I would be nervous because of the amount of net wealth you have tied up in it.
Yep.
Yeah, so I get that now. But there's going to be people getting into Bitcoin right now. They're going to hear of the block size wars. Or maybe not. They will if they listen to this now. But they'll have no idea what it was about, what happened, and how important it was as a period of time for Bitcoin. Because I don't know about you, I'm kind of feel like it had to happen.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm glad it happened. And it's good it happened then.
Absolutely.
It'd be much worse now.
Extremely worse now. And, we talk about a bit more of that after the block size wars, like with Bitcoin upgrade stuff. But yeah, it is absolutely a whole different world. I mean, Bitcoin used to soft fork every 6 months or so. I mean, it was just normal. Getting new upgrades, stuff like that. And then came Segwit. Right. And so that was a whole different thing. And
so should we walk it back and tell the story? So give the background to the block size wars. What was it about? What happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was originally started out with people suggesting that we need to scale Bitcoin. And remember, a lot of this stuff was already thought about. Like the Lightning Network was created in 2015. I mean, right, the paper before that what was the paper? Like 14 or 13? It was definitely before that. But this stuff was already thought about in such an extreme way. And it's really interesting to look back and think about how much we actually did know versus how much we didn't know, because we actually knew a lot. And the people that didn't know a lot, they kind of fell on the side of the big blockers. But when you play this out, that's kind of how it seemed to me. So when we go back and look, it started out with, we need to scale Bitcoin. We need to be able to have, what are the ways we're going to do that? There was the Lightning Network proposed, and then there was the block size proposed.
Go back even further. Talk about scaling Bitcoin. Talk about the limitations. Like I said, we're going to have brand new people who won't know anything about how this works. What were the presented limitations of Bitcoin that required discussions regarding scaling? Yeah,
so the biggest thing was, Roger and many other people, proponents of Bitcoin at the time, really saw it as a medium of exchange. So what was happening was the fees were rising. And that's what really started to kick off the block size debate, because before then it was mostly just geeks talking in forums and stuff like that. But as Bitcoin grew after the 2013 big run up, a lot more people started getting involved. And so that is when 2013, 2014, we started having these these fees increases, and that's where the debate really started to get heated.
Explain how a block works, block size, transactions, and why the fees go up. Literally, for somebody who doesn't understand the basics.
Well, we don't have to get too technical, but at the end of the day, what's really, really important to understand is to make sure that Bitcoin is going to stay a decentralized, actual peer-to-peer network where anybody can actually go on there and figure out how much Bitcoin is left, how much Bitcoin they have, and verify their own transactions. Like, that's the most important thing. So that's what's at stake. That's the value prop of Bitcoin, is the 21 million cap and the fact that anybody can verify it. And so with the block size, the way that they wanted to scale with bigger blocks would kill one of those propositions over time. And that proposition of being able to be self-sovereign with your own UTXO, verify the supply and verify how much, and verify the transactions that you send. So that's what was at threat. That's what was at stake. Because if we do increase the block size, that means that the overall data set is going to be larger. It's going to be more difficult to download. But mainly, we're up against the limits of speed of light. That's the main things. We're up against the limits of speed of light. We can only transact so much data so fast to such a distance. And so when we increase if we increase the throughput of the block size too much, now everything would centralize, similar to how the internet kind of centralized. And so we would need a central authority to verify something, like we do with name systems, DNS and name systems. And so we did not want Bitcoin to go down that route. And so that's basically what was at stake.
So we wanted to basically, so people listen understand, anyone can download the blockchain. The bigger the block sizes are, the bigger the blockchain is. And the bigger the blockchain is, the more, the more expensive the or that it puts limitations on the hardware that you can use to run a node.
Yes.
And then also, as you said, we have to transfer this data around the world
Every 10 minutes.
Every 10 minutes to all the nodes. So it's important to keep this base layer of Bitcoin as small as possible.
Yes. As small and as efficient
Yes.
as possible.
But these block size debates went on for some time, and there are certain people, I think even Jameson said at one point he was a big blocker. Don't hold me to that just in case, but I'm pretty sure
There was a couple of prominent people that thought that because that was such an easy out. It was such an easy thing to comprehend in your mind. We're like, oh, we just increase the block size and everybody's happy. Like, because it's the nuances of it, the technological nuances that everybody overstepped that made that such an easy fix, because that's what everybody wanted. At the end of the day, they want an easy fix. Everybody, what's the easy fix? And so that was the easy fix. So of course, a couple of people not thinking deeply enough about it yet thought that would be a good idea. Probably even Jameson Lott, like you said, would have been one of them. But once you start thinking a little bit more deeply about it and the actual value proposition of Bitcoin and the self-sovereignty of it, then you start to do the math and you start to realize, wait a second, we can only send so much data per second across the world because of the speed of light. It doesn't matter how fast you get your how small you get the space down, the block size down to, or how fast your internet connection is, you will reach a limit. And so you have to make sure that we can still verify every 10 minutes across the world with that data.
But most financial systems are like this, right? They're built in layers.
They're built in layers, but they're absolutely built in these centralized layers, not in a network type of way. Remember, Bitcoin, like the internet, was built in case there's a nuclear catastrophe, right? Nuclear disaster across the world. We still needed the internet to function. And that's in the same vein, that's kind of what Bitcoin is designed to do. The central traditional financial system is not designed to do that. It all runs off of an FTP server, pretty much. Like, at the end of the day, it's duct tape and an FTP server. So that's just simply not truly scalable, at least, and that's why they had to do different layers. And then, of course, the average person doesn't understand finance and economics, so they were very easy able to eventually corrupt the money supply, because it always happens every single time the humans will print the money if we get the chance.
And when you think back, can you think of a period of time when, rather than it just being a discussion, the camp started to split?
Mm-hmm. So that was, I would say, the first thing that I noticed is when there was a conference. What was it? What was this conference? What was the name of this conference? I don't think it was Scaling Bitcoin, but Roger literally had a whole group of people, like almost like a posse, where he was like, look, all the real Bitcoiners who care about Bitcoin, we're going to go over here and we're going to talk. And he drew like a whole crowd of like 25, 30, 40 people away from the 100, 150 people away. He drew them all over to him. And then they just started talking. And that's when I'm like, okay, there's a very clear divide forming here. And then from there, it just went exponential. But unfortunately, what happened was the debate itself got captured. The debate itself got captured, and it changed from scaling Bitcoin and the block size war to who owns the repo, who has control over the GitHub programming repo, the repository, who has control of it. That's what it actually came down to. And that's kind of like what I wanted to make sure that everybody understands and remembers, is that we all wanted Bitcoin to scale. We all wanted what was best for Bitcoin. But then the New York Agreement got signed, and 12 companies decided that they're going to go with their own repo, their own Bitcoin repo. And that's something to think about, because, hey, what if Saylor says one day, you know what? I got some programmers together and we're gonna go over here. This is gonna be our repo. Now, in the reality, of course, what that is just an altcoin, right? Anything that's not running off of core is an altcoin. So that's why I even said at the time that got picked up by a couple of magazines. I'm like, look, this is not Segwit 2x. It's not an upgrade to Bitcoin. It is an entirely different repo run by one single person, Jeff Garzik. And what happened with that?
It failed.
It failed right away. The network,
first block,
the entire network went down instantly because of an off by one error.
Yeah,
a very basic error in Bitcoin. If you know, there's a bit of a bug in Bitcoin that forces you to do things a little bit different. You have to account for that off by one. He did not, and
the first block failed.
As soon as he launches it, it failed. So imagine, if everybody actually would have went with that group. And what happened was I was a part of a group, World Crypto Network, part of a podcast group, where we all decided that we don't want that. And so we created the hashtag Segwit2x. Samson created some hats. That was
no 2x.
That was history. The no 2x hats, hashtag no 2x. And then from there, we educated the world about, okay, guess what? This is no longer about block size. This is no longer about scaling. This is about control over Bitcoin itself.
Right.
And thank God the corporations, the companies lost and the network won. And we won that with a UASF.
So remind what the New York Agreement was and who because the developers refused to join it because wasn't it
That's correct.
behind closed doors?
It was
meeting?
all behind closed doors, and it was all signed off by 12 different companies, big companies in the space, big Coinbase, all the exchanges and things like that. So they were all ready to go because again, you can't really almost even blame them. They have a business, they have a simple solution, they want to get it implemented. But that is the whole reason why Bitcoin can't be run by a single person because it has to be a network where there is no center, or else that center will get captured, and that's what almost happened with the block size wars.
Yeah, there was that compromise agreement to get Segwit in, right?
Yeah, well, thank God, there was able to be able to thank God for Luke being able to create a soft fork, being able to make Segwit a soft fork that made everybody happy because we got a block size increase and we got Segwit in there, which is what we really, really, really needed in order to make the Lightning Network work and scale. So everybody was happy. We got the Lightning Network, we got a block size increase. Okay, great. And so that's what was able to be passed through, and we would stay with the Bitcoin Core repo.
It felt like there was a certain period of time, I remember, where it felt like, okay, this hard fork's going to happen. Bitcoin's going to change.
Yeah, it was scary. Dude, I know prominent, high-ranking people in these big Bitcoin companies that sold. They sold. It was millions of dollars that they made, of course, but they didn't want to sell. But they freaking sold. Now, obviously, they probably bought back in since then. But man, like to hear some of these most prominent people selling their Bitcoin out of fear, millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin out of fear, it was a very scary time.
I think one of the most interesting parts was when the futures market opened. Because what people listening might not understand is when you fought Bitcoin, you actually then have two chains.
Yep.
And so when you have two chains, there's a chain split. You get both versions of the coin. You have the old coin and the new coin.
And the market decides the prices on those.
Yeah, and they set this. I can't remember who did run the futures.
It was on Bitfinex.
Was it Bitfinex?
Yeah.
Bitfinex futures, absolutely.
Yeah, and that was quite interesting because there was a signal from Bitcoiners about this is what we want, and the S2X coin.
Now this was after the whole campaign from WCN and No2X and stuff. This came kind of after that only came because of the success of the No2X campaign. The Bitfinex was like, okay, screw it, let's let people bet on it for real.
Yeah, and the S2X coin dumped.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It was never very high on the markets, and then eventually getting closer and closer to the fork, it just went down. And then, of course, we know that when they actually tried to stand the network up, it fell right back down.
I can't remember. After that bug, did they get the chain going again? They just gave up.
Nope, gave up. There was nobody to run the nodes. Because remember, the network is only there if somebody's running the node, for somebody's running the software, and nobody wanted to run the software.
Did they capture any of the miners?
Was there miners in the New York agreement? I believe there was at least a couple of miners in the New York agreement. It was mostly companies and exchanges, but I believe there was at least one miner on that New York agreement.
Yeah. Well, Roger still forked it later on for Bitcoin Cash.
They still forked it. Yep.
Yeah, and you only have to go and check the price of Bitcoin Cash in terms of Bitcoin terms. I mean,
just check the transaction count.
Yeah,
just check the transaction size, the volume. I mean, everything. Unfortunately, like Saylor says, there's no second best.
Yeah, it's an abject failure, and I almost wonder why he carries on with it. Like, what is the point? You're never going to catch Bitcoin now.
It really has a lot to do with ego. Like, he still thinks he's right. A lot of the community still think they're right, and so they still think that Bitcoin will fall over, and that Bitcoin Cash will surpass it. And it's really it's really difficult to see. But same with the BSV community. Even with the recent ruling with Craig Wright actually is a fraud. Craig Wright is a fraud. Even with that ruling, there's still some people that are like, look, yes, you know what, whether or not Craig is Satoshi or not doesn't matter. But he was dishonest. Yes, he was very dishonest, and it's like, guys, just straight out say he was a fraud. You should not follow him, but they won't even admit that. And it has a lot to do with ego. Remember, these people had years wrapped up. People like Ryan X. Charles, right, who's going to have the $1 billion Bitcoin Cash company.
Craig Wright is Jesus.
Yeah, dude, like seriously, like they had their whole careers and years of wrapped up into this, and so it's very difficult. Luckily, he has the ability to and the humbleness to admit finally when a court says he's wrong, but some people don't still.
Yeah, but also fuck that. Like, fuck Ryan Charles. I'm sorry, but like, you do not need a court judgment to know.
You shouldn't.
You should have
when
known.
You're at this level.
Yeah,
right?
You should have known. I believe these people knew. I think they knew. I think Calvin knew.
I think Calvin knows. I don't know about Ryan though. I think he really believed.
No, I think these people knew.
Gavin believed in the early days as well.
Yeah, I just think I think by the time the lawsuit started, I think people knew that there were so many signs, so many forgeries, so much bullshit. It's like, come on, man.
One after another.
Like, come on. So, like, these people knew to now jump ship like rats at this point. I mean, look, I wish them no harm. Good luck in their lives, but yeah, I'm never going to be friends with these people. I've got zero interest in what they say, apart from telling them to go fuck themselves. Yeah, but the sad thing is the amount of people who have lost serious amounts of money in holding BCH or BSV rather than Bitcoin. The
so much value lost.
So much value lost, time and energy wasted, stress. People call like smart, intelligent people who could be working on Bitcoin have been working on shitcoins. Yep. And I just think it's sad. But look,
I do think it's sad, but I'm glad that we're talking about this because people need to remember, right? People need to remember what we went through and to not have it happen again, or at least to try to learn from the lessons that we had in that. And really the biggest lessons were stay humble and stack sats. I mean, you really, be very careful about who you listen to. You can't just listen to random people of Twitter on the internet, right? Like you really have to do the work. You really have to do the research. And remember, the North guiding star, right? Your North Star is Bitcoin. So if you see people start to be like, maybe releasing some other types of things and some other types of chains, and depending on how far they go with that, because everybody's interested in other things. But how is their relationship to Bitcoin? That's the North Star of personally that I believe that you should find your signal from.
So, like I say, it's about 6 years since we recorded with you. I feel like you've been quietish for about 4 years-ish. Yep. But I did notice you started to tweet again. Me and Danny, I was like, "Go on, Vortex, come back, my man." I was really happy to see it. What brought you back?
I really appreciate that, man. I never fully, like I said, left Bitcoin. I definitely stopped talking about it publicly, though. And again, it's kind of pretty much because I said everything I wanted to say. But just recently, I came back.
You got stuff to say now.
I finally have something to say, like believe it or not. Like, I know, just a .NET pleb, developer. Like, I'm not a protocol developer, but I do talk to these protocol developers. I hang out with these people in groups, and I hear what they say. And I've just always been paying attention. That's why I knew right away, like, to go with. To go with Segwit and not Segwit to X, because it's all very, very apparent when you talk to enough people, when you do the work. And so for me personally, I'm coming back to really let people know that we need to continue to upgrade Bitcoin. We cannot let Bitcoin just stagnate and stay, because we only get this one chance. This is only the one chance that we have with Bitcoin to change money for the world. And if we don't continue to upgrade it, then it will simply create another elite. Now, that may be good or bad, but that's not what I signed up for Bitcoin for. And I don't want to sound like Roger, because that's literally verbatim almost what he said in a couple of It's not what I signed up for, but look, Bitcoin humbles you and you understand what Bitcoin is. And what I want Bitcoin to be is there for everybody. Self-sovereignty for the world, for all 8 billion plus people, right? And the way Bitcoin is right now is that's simply not possible. And I'm not trying to FUD or bring any type of doomer perspective. I just want to let people know the reality of the situation is that we're not done yet. We are not and cannot be done yet. There is so much more to do. That's why I say the North Star is Bitcoin. If you see people starting to work on other stuff, great, let them go. But then don't listen to what they're talking about when it comes to forks and when it comes to upgrades to Bitcoin. Make sure you have your true North Star of Bitcoin. And the big thing that we can do, there's something that we can do right now. That's the good. There's good and bad news. The bad news is that Bitcoin is not going to scale in its current form to every person on the planet. The good news is there have been people that have understood this for many, many years and have been working on solutions for many, many years, Lightning Network being one of them. And we're only like at a very early version of the Lightning Network. In fact, I said back in the day that, and I continue to believe this, that the Lightning Network will be the World Wide Web to Bitcoin's Internet of Money. It will be this interoperable application layer that is in between Bitcoin and every other piece of financial information on the planet, and will always be and has to always be, because Bitcoin is the final settlement of the planet. So in order to make that a reality, we have to continue to make sure that as many people can use it as possible. And for me personally, there's several different things that you can do. The way I understand it, there's several different things you can scale. You can scale the throughput, or you can scale the ownership. And the beautiful thing about some of these upgrades is they can do both. The only thing is we have to decide on which one. So that's the good news, is we have a bunch of awesome solutions out there right now. We just kind of have to decide on which one. But what I want to make sure we don't do is think that for any reason at all that we need to stop working on Bitcoin because it's just so important. The work in Bitcoin, maybe the most important work that we've ever done as a species, needs to continue.
So these ossification conversations are concerning you.
They're a little bit, it's mostly just kind of on the edges,
Mm-hmm.
but even at the edges, I don't want to make sure that can creep in too far in, because look, it's completely understandable to look to you've been saving in Bitcoin for decade plus or close to a decade. You don't want your stack you don't want Bitcoin to fall over, right? Nobody does. But yes, at the same time, you have to understand that Bitcoin isn't done. I mean, this thing is going to eat the world. Whether we continue to upgrade or not, it is going to eat the world, at least in value. The idea, though, is to make sure that as many people on the planet can access it as possible in a self-sovereign way. That's kind of what we're all trying to, at least in various communities that I'm in, try to make sure that people understand. And there's a couple upgrades that we can do that with, and I can explain those if you want.
Yeah, I find ossification kind of selfish. I understand
at the
when
end of the
people want
day, I understand it and I get it, right? But like at the end of the day, it's pretty selfish.
Yeah, no, it is selfish because it's like, all right, ossify. I want to protect my wealth, and
I got my stack, bro.
Yeah,
I'm good. I'm out.
So a lot has happened. A lot has happened in the 4 years you've been gone.
Yes.
The Lightning Network itself has had some challenges. We've seen the strain on the Lightning Network caused by high fees.
Yep.
The ability for people to open channels. For me, I still like Lightning, but I like Lightning as like small value transactions that I do, and I'm quite, don't bite me, but I'm quite happy with using centralized services, custodial services, because I don't leave much Bitcoin on the Lightning Network. Like when I was out in Madeira, we're selling Rail Bedford merch, and I'm buying and selling. Well, no, sorry, just selling. We take a few £1,000 on Lightning. It's in my open node. I transfer it to Bitcoin. I transfer it to Cold Wallet. That's it. And I'm happy with that.
And I think that a really important thing to understand about the Lightning Network is that it can work in both a centralized and non-custodial way, right? It can work in both a centralized and decentralized way. Because yes, Lightning has evolved a little bit into these LSPs, right? Because you do need a lot of liquidity and things like that, it turns out. But it is still a decentralized network. Literally anybody can still run a Bitcoin or a Lightning node and fire up a channel between the two of them and be completely self-sovereign in that way. So that's the distinction, right? Because you have all these L2s scams that are coming in recently with Bitcoin, and they're going to sell you their token, and they're going to sell you their coin, and they're going to tell you how they're going to scale. But at the end of the day, like what really matters is there a decentralized component, and does it actually touch Bitcoin's chain? Like that's the most important thing. And Lightning is kind of the only thing that we have that can do that. Now, it's not going to be the end all be all, but I guarantee you that it will still be the connective tissue that we will need for many, many decades on, because it's not done yet. It's still a very, very early version. There's many more things that we can do. Splicing just came out recently, which is amazing to be able to rebalance your channel without having to close the channel. Like these little incremental things, each one steps on, builds on the other. And eventually, next thing you know, Lightning Network has scaled to orders of magnitude than where it is right now, just like it's scaled orders of magnitude to where it was in 2018.
What do you like any of the other scaling solutions? There's a lot, as you said, a lot of L2 scams at the moment. Yeah. Tiring. But there are some interesting conversations regarding Liquid. I'm intrigued by Liquid. There's a lot of interesting conversations regarding Fedi and eCash.
Yes.
And any of these other solutions are things you think are going to be an important part of the network?
Yeah, so I absolutely do think that these things are just simply another layer. And they're all going to be connected by Lightning, right? Lightning is going to connect them all. So to me, it's just Bitcoin, then the Lightning, and then anything else you want to put on top of that's going to be amazingly different, things that we can't even imagine right now. But some of those that we couldn't imagine a few years ago is Fedi. That is very, very interesting. There are hundreds of large Bitcoin groups like Bitcoin Beach across the world that are able to use that, and those groups are scaling. Like there was only a few in 2018. There was like 10 or 12 in 2020, and now there's like hundreds if you go look it up across the world. And so solutions like Fedi is going to be amazing for that. But Lightning Network again is going to be that connective tissue. And a lot of people like to dog. It's really easy to dog on the Lightning Network because it's so early. Just like it was really easy to dog on Bitcoin. It was just so early. But eventually, hey, before you know it, we're doing almost as much volume as gold on the ETFs. And you just give it enough time. And there are a number of solutions that we're going to build on top of Lightning, because again, Lightning is not the end all be all, but it is going to be that connective tissue. And we do need to keep improving it. And guess what? There's some proposals out there that will do just that. There's also some interesting cashew solutions right now that people seem to get down on for some reason. But as long as you can connect out to Lightning and then connect out to on chain, I mean, I see no problem with it. People need to understand that not everything has to be decentralized, right? There's going to be both centralized solutions and decentralized solutions. The thing that you have to understand is we still have to have, as long as we still have these decentralized solutions underneath as the base, as the default, then we're good. Then you can build whatever the hell. I don't care what Sailor does. I don't care what Coinbase does. As long as I can still open up a channel with anybody that I want. And we need these types of things like Cashew. We need the type of stuff like LSPs. We even going to need probably ARC. Probably going to need ARC. Probably going to need ASPs. Because there's just these trade-offs, these different things, because money is so much to everybody, right? There's just an infinite amounts of uses, infinite amounts of layers that Bitcoin will create. In the traditional financial system, we only have a few layers, but that's because that traditional financial system only serves a very small subset of the human race. Bitcoin is going to serve everybody. So we're going to have, holy crap, it's not going to be like Andreas says, where there's going to be Joey coin and there's going to be Ashley coin. No, what there's going to be is going to be Bitcoin, and there's going to be infinite different ways you can use Bitcoin on top of that. And all of it will require Bitcoin, just like the internet required you to have an email address, required you to have a few. Bitcoin's going to require, the world is going to require you to have a Bitcoin address and a Bitcoin wallet to take advantage of some of these solutions.
Are ETFs a scaling solution?
I would say that ETFs are inevitable. I would say that they're inevitable. They're definitely. You can. It's funny because people are like, "What is a layer of Bitcoin? Is Coinbase a layer too?
Yeah.
Is ETFs a layer too?" To me personally, I see that as Bitcoin just eating the world. And an inevitability.
Because if Wallet of Satoshi is custodial and Coinbase is custodial and an ETF is custodial, are they essentially similar-ish? I mean, I know obviously with an ETF, I can't send and receive. And
with one you can take out your Bitcoin.
But between Coinbase like wallets, you can.
Yeah.
I don't know. I see the point. Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why projects like BTC Pay Server, right? Shout out to Nicholas Dorier, is so important because if you look at Coinbase, what did they just do to their API? They just took away Bitcoin access basically to their API. So if you want to transfer Bitcoin, you literally have to have a Coinbase account to use their API. And that is exactly the fear that I have if we don't continue to upgrade Bitcoin, is that it's all the custodial use will be centralized. And then at that point, they can do whatever they want. They can create more Bitcoin. They can decide who you want to send your Bitcoin to. And that's the scary thing that we get to in a world where we're not able to upgrade Bitcoin.
There appears to be a bit of a deadlock within the developer community about
I don't know if I'd call it a deadlock. I'd call it a point of where we now have to make a decision. Okay. Because there's been so much research. There's been all of these different proposals. They're all great. They each have their own trade-offs. But we have to now and soon, relatively soon, decide on what's going to make everybody happy, as many people happy as possible. And in my opinion, that really is going to be the LNHance proposal.
Which, explain what that is.
Yeah. So LNHance was, first I want to shout out a few people actually with LNHance, because there's been some people not only that has helped me, but I want to shout them out because guess what? They're Bitcoiners. They can help you as well if you have any questions. I really want you to be able to access these people. So I kind of give a shout out to, of course, Jeremy Rubin, who wrote CTV. Then shout out to Brandon Black at Reardon Code on Twitter. He's the actual creator of this LNHance proposal, the person behind it. And then, of course, got to shout out your boy Shinobi.
Yeah,
he's got so many great articles on CTV and how that can help Bitcoin. Then Owen Chemies, because I want to shout out him because he does all those visualizations on Twitter that you can see stuff. He's explained CTV and cold channels in a very visual way and helped me a lot. And then Moon Settler, one of the developers, he's kind of like, you can almost think of like a code developer on LNHance because he's going back and forth with Reardon all the time trying to figure things out. So shout out to those guys because I hear what they say and I'm kind of privy to their conversations because I'm in their chats. So they've let me in their chats. And so, man, shout out to those guys. If you need help understanding this stuff, make sure you do. Shout out to at Reardon Code. Go to Owen Chemies. Go to Jeremy Rubin. They will help you. They will literally they will answer your questions because they want the best for Bitcoin, and they have no problem answering technical questions in a way, in my opinion. Jeremy and specifically Brandon Black, Reardon Code. Holy smokes, a very technical way of explaining things that's non-emotional. Like he will work with you. He will, whatever your level is, he will try to explain at that level. Kind of a lot like what you do, Peter. Like whatever somebody's level at, you seem to have the ability to transcribe that into a way that everybody can understand it. And I think Brandon Black has that as well. So you got to get him on your podcast.
Can we talk to him?
Brandon Black at Reardon Code.
I've not spoke to him, no.
Yeah, we should.
And
we want Jeremy on as well. We've been trying to get Jeremy on.
Yeah, Jeremy's a little bit gun shy right now, but Reardon, whoa, come on, man. He's you got to get him on.
I think Jeremy feels like he's.
Sorry, I did speak to him before this trip, actually.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. So we will get him on at some point.
I feel like Jeremy just feels a little bit bruised by what happened, which is why I want to talk to him. Okay, so what is this proposal? This is the CTV.
So LNHance, so there's a number of different there's a number of different covenant proposals right now. And so what I want everybody to understand is that covenants is kind of the next thing in Bitcoin. That's the next way that we help to scale Bitcoin.
What are they? Explain what they are.
So covenants is simply the ability to control future transactions, like a limitation on future transactions. The ability to say that we're going to create this transaction in the future, and we can cryptographically prove it. And so that's all it is. And with that simple understanding that this is simply a limitation or restriction on a transaction in the future, you can build all sorts of things, because that is a Lego block that you can then combine with a couple other Lego blocks to create some crazy stuff. So specifically, LNHance does have CTV, Jeremy Rubin's CTV in it. And even Reardon gave me a couple of points to say, but man, there's just so much cool stuff. But what I want people to understand about it is that LNHance is CTV with just a couple of other little things in it. And it allows us to kind of be the best of both worlds, because one of the other proposals out there is APO, any pre-val, and this emulates that. So we get CTV, we get APO, and with this, we can also achieve LN symmetry, which means we can have cold channels. We can scale Lightning Network even more.
What are cold channels? So
before I get into that, like CTV scales the ownership, right? But cold channels can scale the throughput on layer 2, because all a cold channel is basically a covenant template in a Lightning transaction in a covenant template. That's it. So that means that because it's in a covenant template, that means that transaction hasn't been broadcast yet technically to the network. So it's almost like an offline, like NVK's card, right? It's just basically an offline transaction is all it is.
Interesting.
So covenants are essentially just allows us to do offline transactions, and we have to be able to do a lot of offline stuff in order to keep that chain as efficient as possible. So the LNHance it's CTV. And it's in its best form, enables so many things, enables cold channels, it enables ARC, it enables payment pools, which is another big, amazing thing that we can do. Payment pools is basically a whole network of coin joins. Like, you don't even need coin join anymore. CTV is literally the answer to so many of our issues in Bitcoin right now.
Can you explain why you wouldn't need coin joins?
Yeah, because essentially you're all already in the same cryptographic pool. It's almost like being in a Lightning Network channel that's encrypted on both ends by default. So this network is encrypted on both ends by default. So anybody in this payment pool can be in the same UTXO, and therefore they're self-sovereign, because they still have unilateral exit. So
is there general agreement that we need covenants, and the challenge is how we do it?
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that, because that's where we are. That's the good news, is that everybody kind of agrees that we need covenants. We all kind of agree. This is the next thing that we're going to need. It's all on how we're going to get them.
And so what is the challenge, or what challenges has Jeremy faced with getting it through? My perspective is that, and I could be wrong, but my perspective is he hasn't recruited in enough of the older generation Bitcoin developers to say, we agree with this.
So I'd say he hasn't convinced enough of the graybeards.
Yeah.
As NVK likes to say on his podcast. Shout out to NVK and Bitcoin Review. More people need to listen to that. It's a technical podcast, but yeah, I think that what Jeremy's issue was he was 100% staying within the technical community. And I mean the extreme technical community, all the straight up autistic geniuses that are well beyond us. He tends to stay in that type of community. And so I don't believe that he got the marketing right, because where we are in Bitcoin is you got to market like some kind of upgrade. This is not 2012, 2015 Bitcoin where every 6 months we get new software. If you want to change to Bitcoin, you really, really have to prove it out and prove that it's going to be good. And with covenants, we've proven time again, there's so many different examples. You can go to utxos.org to see all these different examples, to see all these people that all agree we need covenants in some form. And it's just massive, the things that it can do.
And so your Peter Willets, your Luke Dashers, do we know what they think of this proposal?
So on utxos.org, you can go on and see how which actual people act or acknowledged and believe in it. It's absolutely most developers. Peter Willa, I don't know if he's actually weighed in on it, because he did kind of leave along with Vlad, I believe, a couple of years ago. They kind of left it to the new people, and there's been a bit of a interesting drama because of that, because the people that were left kind of have more control than they wanted. But I'm not sure if they've particularly weighed in on covenants or not, and I don't know if they want to, because the whole reason they left is because people were depending on their opinion too much.
What is the process from taking this to a proposal to be something that's built and approved?
Yeah,
so how does that happen? It's
crazy because it's a real grassroots thing. And if you go to my website, bitcoindev.org, where it's a website where I have a lot of information for developers looking to get into Bitcoin, I have a bunch of different links there that show how you can get into Bitcoin Core, how to start, how to get started. And there's a bunch of different links that are blog posts that people have written. And so you can go check out these various different processes, bitcoindev.org. But it's really crazy because it's always a grassroots thing from the bottom up. And generally what you do is you create a proposal, you create some, well, first of all, before you even create a proposal, you start talking to the community about what you think it needs. You start talking to the community about how you think you can get there, you get some ideas, you build something, you get some feedback, you see what they say. This is what Jeremy did. You build something, you get some feedback. There's some feedback, maybe need some few changes. Okay, you go back and change it. Then you go back and you shop it around to all the conferences, to all the Bitcoin technical communities, to all the meetups, and you try to get people to spread the word. And that's really how it has to be, grassroots from the bottom up. That's the only way you're going to get enough people to actually convince the people that are actually merging changes.
Okay, Bitcoin. So in the end, it's going to come down to
because it's not a democracy, right?
Yeah,
Bitcoin is not a democracy.
It's going to come down to whether. In the end, it will come down to whether it's merged. And ultimately, you would have to have the miners signal for the soft fork as well.
I believe that's how we're going to probably do the next soft fork is people don't like the miner signaling because it perceives to gives miners power. But at the end of the day, their signal is useful for upgrading Bitcoin. Their signal is still useful. And so I think we should still do it that way. I think we should still get a signal from the miners to be able to all get a threshold of 90+% after a certain amount of time. And if it gets 90+% after a certain amount of time, cool, it gets activated on the network. That's how I think we should do it.
Wasn't there some kind of like fast track thing?
Speedy trial.
Yeah, speedy trial.
Speedy trial
activation.
So they try to do that. And what that simply does is it gets, there's a very short activation period. And that's where it scared a whole lot of people. Because remember, covenants is so difficult to understand. It's so important, but it's so freaking obtuse and crazy and esoteric. And it's not farm terms, right? It's not, as NVK likes to say, there's no farm terms that can explain covenants. It's all crazy mathematical stuff. Only thing we can say is that, it's a restriction on future spending. But what does that actually mean to the regular person? That means almost nothing. So, in addition, not only did he choose a very short activation period, I don't believe he gave enough time for people to absorb it.
Okay.
And even though it was years, like he was working on it for a couple of years, and I still don't think it was quite enough time to absorb it, especially with the speedy trial. It ended up scaring a lot of people, and extremists started calling it an attack on Bitcoin,
Well, interestingly, I like John Carvalho's point. He said every upgrade to Bitcoin is an attack. And you should treat it as an attack.
To some degree, yes. But if you're actually in the community and you're helping to review these things and you're discussing these things and how they work and the best way to execute these things, you're not attacking Bitcoin. You're helping to improve Bitcoin.
Of course.
We get what he's saying.
He's saying treat every upgrade adversarially.
Until, do it in the beginning and then do research. So I would caveat would say, definitely. I definitely agree with John Carvalho and then you have to do research and then make your decision. Don't just immediately say, okay, it's an attack and throw your hands up. Say it's an attack. It could hurt Bitcoin. Let's see how it can help Bitcoin more than it can hurt Bitcoin. And if it can help it more than it can hurt it, then maybe it's not so bad. And CTV, for example, is some of the most peer-reviewed code in Bitcoin's history. We're talking 4+ years. We're talking less than 50, 60 lines of code. Extremely pure, extremely conservative. There is no gotchas with CTV. There is no taproot scenario, right?
There's no unknown unknowns.
There's no unknown unknowns with standard CTV by itself.
But how can you say that because it's an unknown unknown?
Because it's so simple.
Okay.
Because it's so simple. It only does very, very little things. There's only a few lines of code. Now, yes, Cat is only a few lines of code, but that does crazy amounts of stuff, where CTV is very, 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 very restrictive, very specific, very conservative. So we can say that without a doubt, there's no unknowns with CTV by itself. Now, when you start adding some other stuff, maybe CTV plus Cat or CTV plus some other crazy things, then it gets crazy. Now, the LNHance proposal is simply CTV. It's basically mostly just CTV with a couple other things, CSFS check sig from stack, and then internal key. The only thing you have to know about that stuff is that they help with the Lightning Network.
Okay.
They help us get LN symmetry. So it's CTV, we can scale ownership. It's LN symmetry, which means we can scale the Lightning Network. I mean, it's a win-win-win. This is, in my opinion, the absolute highest probability of getting into Bitcoin is with an upgrade like LNHance. I don't know if it's going to be LNHance, but it's going to be something very similar to it. And
I'm sold. So where's the status? Has Jeremy just paused it, or is he?
No, it's right now. There's actual a bounty for if anybody finds any errors with CTV, you can capture it. There's at least five Bitcoin in there right now, and it's been there for years. There was like small issue that somebody found. I think A-Towns found it, but he didn't claim the bounty because it was a relatively small bug, relatively simple bug. So got fixed, done. It's been 4+ years that CTV has pretty much remained unchanged. Literally, the code hasn't changed.
You're pro CTV, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not technical, but I buy that argument very, very heavily.
So how do we get from this point to it happening?
Yes. So basically, what you do is, if you want to actually know, you follow the people that are building the stuff, right? So I'm following Reardon code. I'm following what he's doing. He's making incremental updates. He's putting this in front of reviews, in front of technical people, in front of meetups, in front of the Bitcoin Core Review. There's a Bitcoin Core Review Club that gets reviews new code every week. And so he's put it in front of them. So he's putting it in front of a bunch of people. He's getting the word out, and he's making changes as necessary. And that is how you make an upgrade. The thing about Brandon Black, Reardon code, is that I've never seen somebody be so objective on all sides with little to no emotion. That is so unheard of in just humanity, in just humans, most engineers are extremely emotional, and they will just go crazy, they're like, why don't you understand this, you idiot? For most programmers. But man, Brandon Black has been helping and explains things in such a great way. Make sure you shout out to Stephen Livera. He was on Stephen Livera's podcast.
Okay.
Really outlined the idea that, the UTXOs cannot scale as it is now. We need to have covenants. We need to have UTXO sharing.
Well, we've been asking this question.
Yeah, we need to get him on the show. That sounds of it.
We do. Yeah, we've been asking this question for a year with very poor answers.
I know you get a lot of different answers.
Can you be self-sovereign if you don't own a UTXO? And it's
the answer's just no, though. I feel like.
Well, I think we as a community.
The answer's maybe.
Well, no. I think as a community, we actually came to a conclusion on that. If you can have unilateral exit, then I would say that we say that you're sovereign, because as long as you can take your Bitcoin and leave, you're self-sovereign. If somebody says you can't spend this Bitcoin or you can't have your Bitcoin, that by default is not self-sovereign. But if you can have unilateral exit like you can with CTV, like you can with Lightning, that to me is self-sovereign.
With Lightning, if you don't control the UTXO.
Well, with Lightning, you don't have to control your UTXO to use it, but you can, and that's important.
Yeah. So we've had a lot of maybes. I'm very interested in it. I'm not a decision maker. I'm not somebody who should be of influence because I'm not technical, but I certainly think we would help facilitate the discussions and the debate to help get people around a table. But I am very interested in it. Are there competing proposals? Yeah,
that's kind of the issue, is that we all want covenants. We all know that covenants is the next thing to scale Bitcoin because it helps with everything. Scaling ownership, scaling throughput on layer 1 and layer 2. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And so as far as, what was the question? Sorry.
Competing proposals.
Yeah. So that's the other thing, is that we had CTV and it was great and everybody was reviewing it. And then somebody Blockstream proposed TX hash.
Okay.
And it's like, oh man. So that's another covenant proposal, but it's more complex because the complaint with CTV was it wasn't complex enough, or it didn't have
wasn't complex enough.
Sorry, it didn't do enough features.
Okay.
And that's the whole point. We wanted to keep it conservative so that it can do all the things. And that's why I like LNHance, because it does APO and kind of gives us some of the things that TX hash does, all the important things, and none of the unknowns, because TX hash is a beast. It's a beast. It's like a beast of a covenant proposal. And there is a lot of features in there. And I'm not comfortable with that, adding that many things at once to Bitcoin, like CTV, CSFS, internal key. Okay, these things make sense. These things are very simple, and when you combine them together as Lego blocks, you can build and scale the things. But man, Cat, TX hash, boy, they just get too complex for
But
me.
Blockstream carries a lot of weight.
That's right.
Yeah, long history in Bitcoin. A lot of people work from there, been around a long time. Is this a race, a battle?
So I think that everybody wants their own proposal in, and I think you guys have mentioned this, where everybody wants their own thing, in Bitcoin. And so I think what's going to happen is, like I said, we're going to get covenants. Covenants is a necessity. We have to have it. The only question is, how are we going to get it? And so, and in what proposal?
Will there be compromises?
I believe that there absolutely has to be some compromises at some point. I mean, in all fairness, CTV is the compromise. Like that, people wanted something not complex, but still scales ownership and helps the Lightning Network. I mean, that's LNHance, CTV plus check sig from stack plus internal key. We get all the things. Like all the things.
Do we want OpCat?
See, that's the thing where like, there's so many unknowns with OpCat. I can't honestly say that I would go for that. But you know what? If that's how we get covenants on Bitcoin and the world decides it, I can't change that. But we're going to get covenants. I hope to God it's not through Cat.
Remind me of that crazy shit that you get with OpCat.
You get drive chains, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So then
that's one of the things you get.
Huge minor weird incentives.
That's where we might get MEV.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. OpCat, when Shinobi explained it to me, freaked me out.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a good one to me, but I'm definitely pro CTV.
And it's funny because you got Andrew Podesta like going on there being like, yeah, Cat is awesome, it's fine. And it's like,
is that because it's like a thought experiment for him though?
I don't know what the heck his thinking was that, because like he knows the crazy second and third layer order of effects that can happen. At least I think he does. And yet he goes over none of that in some of his podcasts that he's been on, telling people about Cat and things. And it's like, guys,
time to get Andrew back on the show. Been a
while.
while.
Get Andrew back on here. That would be awesome actually, to get his thoughts and ask him, be like, why do you think Cat, why do you think that the second and third order effects on Cat are negligible? Because I don't think they are. So
if we do get covenants and we got CTV, what kind of time frame do you think that would be?
And that's the thing, it's like Lightning. We're going to get it once it gets activated, but then it takes years to evolve in a step by step manner, one feature after the other, right? And so it will take years to actually happen. And that's another reason why we kind of have to get an upgrade relatively soon, because Bitcoin is getting so big now. It's getting so huge. It's gonna. I mean, look how hard it is just to activate CTV. I mean, we activated Segwit and Taproot. These are complete beasts. These are complete changes on how the Bitcoin transaction is actually stored in the blockchain. But yet we can't get CTV, which is like 45 lines of extremely conservative code.
45 lines of code.
It's like less than like 50 lines of.
Are you surprised by that?
Extremely conservative.
Rob Hamilton told us that. So
really?
It's very little lines of code. It's not little as Cat. Cat's less. But
maybe it was Cat that Rob
Cat's like the 30 lines of code that just changes.
I mean, I assumed it'd be like tens of thousands of lines of code.
Would you want opvault with CTV?
I wouldn't mind it, but you get vaults with LNHance. That's another thing that you get, is you get vaults and you get the emulation of APO. So you kind of get all the things. I wouldn't mind if we got CTV with opvault, not a problem, because you can do crazy stuff, but you actually don't even need it with LNHance.
Listen to you with your opcodes.
Opcode.
Opcodes. Anything else that we want or need? And longer term, like after this, will there be another thing in another 4 or 5 years time?
So there's always going to be something. The most important thing we have to get across, I think, that I want to get across to people is that we can't stop.
Yes.
We can't rest on our laurels and be like, oh, look, we created a new elite and now this is only good for a certain small percentage of the people. I mean, we just created another financial system. And if that does end up happening, and if we can't upgrade Bitcoin and Bitcoin does just create this new financial elite, my only message would be like, please use your wealth for like good, right? Like,
but we failed.
Do not do traditional finance. Try to enhance Bitcoin, try to enhance humanity, try to enhance freedom. Because if we can't upgrade Bitcoin, like, man, it's just a whole mess. It's a whole nother elite that is just a whole nother piece of the traditional financial system, and nothing really changes.
So you back now?
That's the other thing. I don't know if I'm fully back yet. I don't know. If I came back fully, I would be on Twitter like every day. I would have a new podcast, probably the Bitcoin Upgrade Podcast.
Yeah.
I already registered the domain low key, but
do it.
I don't know if I'm actually gonna do it. But it would be the Bitcoin Upgrade podcast, and I would literally just talk about Bitcoin upgrade stuff. It'd be similar to Bitcoin Review, almost talking about new stuff that helps Bitcoin, but it wouldn't just be talking about versions of things. It would actually be like, how does this help? How does this? And it would just be geeks talking. But I don't think I'm fully back yet. It depends on how this debate goes. Let's see how this CTV, let's see how this Covenant debate continues to evolve. We'll see.
Well, I just love the fact that we're getting to do this again. I thought we never would. I thought that was it. It was done.
That was it.
One and done. Back in.
I kind of thought I was done too forever, like, you know. But there's something inside me that made sure that if there was ever something that I needed to say, that I would still have my platform. Like I'd still have Twitter, I'd still be able to go on a podcast. I still keep in touch with you guys and a bunch of other Bitcoiners. And so, if there was ever a need, I would come back and.
What was it like having some time off from it?
Oh, it was beautiful. It was okay. Check this out. Bitcoin is extremely heavy, right? I mean, we're talking about the heaviest of topics. We're talking about people's wealth, people's money, people's livelihood. We're talking about terrible stuff that the fiat system has done. There's a lot of heavy stuff. And so taking like I said, I never left Bitcoin, but I definitely left Bitcoin Twitter for a little while.
So you weren't doom scrolling at all?
So no doom scrolling. So,
nope.
Right? So it was just an incredible weight that lifted off my chest and gave me a new perspective that when I come back, that to keep the most important things in mind. And to because boy, I just talked so much on Twitter before. I just shit posted and all these things, all the things that you do once you get enough followers. And now I'm just extremely conservative in what I want to say, which podcasts I want to go on, who I want to talk to. And the biggest thing I want to say again is just the covenants, man. They're here. And everybody agrees we need them. And I'm just excited to see how we actually get them.
Well, listen, we're 7.5 years in doing this. You're 5 years?
I got on the show.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Five and a bit years on the show.
But how long in Bitcoin though?
Since 2016.
Okay. So that's a little bit longer then.
And I'm ready for my break.
Yeah, no, look, it
Might need a year
sounds appealing. Sometimes I'm like, if I could just take even just like have a sabbatical, have a Bitcoin sabbatical, but we can't. We've got 150 shows a year to make.
Let's just sabbatical the bear market.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, turn off the podcast for the bear, but just play old shows.
I think the best thing you guys could probably do is just probably to leave Bitcoin Twitter for like a week or two, if that's possible. Because that's a long time in Bitcoin Twitter.
Come on, I can do it.
That's a
I can
long
do it.
time.
I've done it for
Just
few
a
days.
week
You could do
is
a week off Twitter.
I can do
Just
it
a week
for
is life changing.
100k sats
100k sats from what?
for a week off Twitter.
From what point?
From today. From right now, 1 p.m. on Monday.
No, I can't do it. It's not worth it. I would, because what is that? Like $50?
I just know you couldn't do
Is
it.
that $50?
It's 70, yeah.
$70. No, I'd pay $70 to go back on. Yeah, like if you took it away, said,
Yeah, but as a challenge, you couldn't do it.
well, I could with the right number. You offer me a Bitcoin, I'd do it.
I
No,
would
I'm
do
not doing
almost
that.
anything for a Bitcoin. For a whole Bitcoin.
Well, you're in Vegas.
That's true. That's true. Maybe I should start stacking my sats in various other ways. Let's see.
Well, I love you, man, and I'm so glad to see you. I'm so glad you're back doing something.
I love you guys.
I hope it's not another 6 years, 7 years till we do it next. I probably won't be doing this in 6, 7 years.
You got to retire at some point.
Yeah,
Man.
gotta retire. Look, yeah, I want to do other things at some point. I don't want to
You
travel.
already
as
got the
much.
football club though.
Got the football
Maybe
club.
go
There's things
full-time
on
to that.
yeah, some things. We've got a conference in Bedford coming up, and started discussing the idea of maybe if that makes money, using money for that to do like Bitcoin grants for people in Bedford.
Wow.
That's like an idea. Like we're throwing around. I say throwing around. I'm 100% sure I'm going to
Sure,
do it.
but that's still. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the type of things that that we want. That I want wealthy Bitcoiners to like to
I'm not
do
a
in the
wealthy
future.
Bitcoiner.
I know. But when I want when people do become wealthy after Bitcoin,
Yeah.
to do is to put some of it back into Bitcoin. Like currently, I don't have kids right now. I hope to still have kids one day. But like if I was diagnosed with cancer and I had to die like soon, I would put my Bitcoin like back into probably open sats. Like I'd just throw it all into open sats. Not just because like my family is not appreciative, and, but
Fuck them.
but seriously, like you really have to put energy and actual sats back into the network to make sure it continues to grow.
Well, that's where my head's at. It's kind of like there comes a time whereby, how can you use your energy in a more useful way? And it's like, I think if we can make money on this event that we're putting on, which we think we will, if we can then distribute some of that out to other people in Bitcoin, but they don't have to do Bitcoin things.
Mhm.
It's not like OpenSats. Like, if it's a young athlete who wants to go and train abroad, or if it's an artist or someone who wants a business, if we can help them out,
Absolutely.
we'll give them in Bitcoin. So we'll encourage them to learn about Bitcoin. But if we could do that, I think that's the future of where my energies are. So hopefully Hopefully, we won't be sitting down doing a podcast like this in 6 years because I'll be done.
I'll be done.
I'll be
Sat in
done.
the pool instead.
It'll be Danny. Danny will be on the road. It'll
Yep.
be the What Danny Did show.
Peter will be retired and just be the Danny show.
Is there anywhere you want to send people?
I definitely check out if you want to know my history, because I've been away from Bitcoin for a while publicly, and I was pretty deep into Bitcoin, the Bitcoin community. So if you want to see some of the previous things I've done, like podcasts or articles, go to the1vortex.com, all spelled out, the1vortex.com. And I really hope that people go to bitcoindev.org and start sending that out to more and more people who want to learn about Bitcoin development, specifically, of course, developers and other people. Because it's a great, even if you have a Bitcoin startup and you want to get people, want to get your developers up on the latest and greatest stuff, or maybe even experimenting with some newer experimental stuff, I put that on there as well. So bitcoindev.org.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you guys.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.